Alright, guys, so last night it was UFC 260 held at the Apex Center in Las Vegas. Main event Stipe Miocic versus Francis Ngannou, the rematch. These guys, they first fought back in Boston at the TD Bank Garden in January 2018, and it's the first time they're meeting against one another. Since that timeline, I'm gonna give you guys a short timeline. Francis Ngannou and Stipe Miocic ended up fighting. A lot of hype was going into Francis Engano. He was the favorite. You know, the UFC hasn't seen a heavyweight of that magnitude knocking out people like that. And the last heavyweight to ever in combat sports to knock out people at that very high rate was Iron Mike Tyson. And Francis Ngannou has that, star power behind him. His story is phenomenal. A refugee from Cameroon, escaped Cameroon to go to France, where he later ended up training to train for mixed martial arts, which ended up progressing him into the UFC. I'm just giving you guys a very short, simple story about that. But anyways, Stipe Miocic. That's the correct term. That's the correct way that you say his name, Miocic, not Miocic. Right? I had to call my Croatian friend. He verified with me. He was like, "It's Miocic." But anyways, Stipe Miocic dominated all 5 rounds in their first meeting at the TD Bank Garden at UFC 220. Engano looked tired. Was never a challenge in his UFC career up until that very point. Felt some type of level of exhaustion, which no fighter ever wants to feel, and it just showed that wrestling was the way to go and how to stop Francis Ngannou. Now, fast forward 3 years later, Stipe has this trilogy fight with Daniel Cormier. Daniel Cormier won round 1. I mean, the first meeting, all right, via knockout. Stipe won the last 2 matches, match 2 and 3. Won the second one by knockout, body shots, which was very, very good on his head coach Marcus. And then the third one, it was just got lighter, went down in weight, and speed just showed that it was able to become a problem in the game plan versus Daniel Cormier. As for Francis Ngannou, he ends up having a fight with Derek Lewis. Terrible fight. It just looked like Francis was gun shy. And after that, he goes on a terror, knocking out people like JDS and, Jairzinho Rosenstrike and the whole 9, putting people through destruction and just finishing off people very, very quickly. So now we're at this point, UFC 260 at the Apex Center, Stipe versus Francis. Now, going into the fight, I had a bunch of questions. I was going to put out a video, but, a lot of stuff going on made it hard for me to, sit down and have some time to record a video. But here I am. Stipe, is close to 10 pounds lighter than when he was facing Francis Ngannou. Now, I was questioning it because of the fact that I felt like that strategy worked perfectly well against Daniel Cormier. Daniel Cormier is not a one punch knockout artist compared to Francis Ngannou. So speed will definitely help, especially that they're both wrestlers. They can strike, but Stipe has the better advantage when it comes to the striking department over Daniel Cormier. I have a feeling that the reason why Stipe dropped down in weight is to be more elusive, being able to, evade punches and stuff like that, and able to take Francis down. Only problem is that Francis, when he weighed in, he was 2 pounds short of the weight of the heavyweight weight limit, which is 263. You have like a 30-pound difference, and then we're talking about Francis cutting down weight, possibly rehydrated Francis maybe at a 40-pound difference. I mean, it becomes really, really difficult at that point, try to, bring somebody down that's 40 pounds heavier than you. So, going into the fight in round 1, we were able to see, Francis become calm, just watching what he was doing. Sure, he was got a little bit frantic frantic and stuff like that. But one thing that we've seen, in the growth in the last 3 years that these two gentlemen have fought one another, Francis has been, learning on how to stuff the takedown. I mean, he sprawled. Stipe tried going for a single leg takedown, and Francis denied that. Stipe tried going for a double leg takedown. Francis ended up pushing his feet back, holding onto Stipe, bringing him down, and then after that, he was going to go for a back mount, right? He went for Stipe's back, and then he just started, hitting him with punches as hard as he can. He exhausted himself a little bit. He was using a little bit of too much air because you ended up seeing that Francis was breathing out of his mouth. Stipe, I gotta say, one thing this guy has is this guy has a chin, and this guy can absorb a hell of a punch. All right, he was eating so many hard, clean punches by Francis Engano, and it just showed that Stipe will not go down after just one punch. You gotta just batter him down in order to break him. Stipe, it just seemed once Stipe tried going for the single leg takedown, I saw Chael Sonnen said that he went the wrong direction as for trying to go for the takedown. He went left instead of going right. He ended up picking up his head instead of dropping his head and trying to take him down. Use the gravity, and force him to go down with him. But it just, Francis was trying to stuff the takedown, and everything that Stipe knows about wrestling, all right, he was just trying to fight on trying to go for those takedowns, and Francis just, denied him. That was not the case in the first fight. The first fight, Francis was easily getting taken down. But I also got to say this, all right, and I feel like this needs to get spoken, much more about, is that the small cage, the small octagon did have a huge factor in this, in my opinion, all right? This octagon that they were fighting in last night was, I think it was, 30% smaller than the actual octagon. So anytime you want to try to go for a takedown, I mean, by the time you backpedal a couple steps back, you're already hitting the fence. So I think that helped out tremendously for Francis Ngannou in round one. All right, Stipe looked a little bit frustrated. I think, I thought personally, Stipe looked like he had a better idea on what to do since he ended up fighting Daniel Cormier. But those are two totally separate people. I know Stipe fought Daniel Cormier back in August at the Apex Center. But Daniel Cormier is not a knockout artist, all right? This guy's a wrestler. Francis Ngannou, this guy's a knockout artist. So this worked out so perfectly for Francis Ngannou. So once he ended up stopping those takedowns, right, I just felt like it was kind of over. I was like, this fight's not going to last. If Francis can stop takedowns, then Stipe is going to have a very long night. If not, he's going to get put to sleep. Now, going into round two, right, exchanges were being thrown, and Francis ended up dropping Stipe with a left jab, putting him against the cage, knocking him down. Stipe gets up, throws a right hook, stumbles, Francis, gets him pretty clean, and then Stipe, out of character, rushes, tries to clip Francis, and Francis hits him with the hardest punch that you could ever imagine, knocking Stipe Miocic back on his head, hitting the canvas, and it just looked very scary because the way that he ended up falling back, he put all that weight on the back of his knee. It looked like he possibly could have tore his ACL. I mean, there's no reports that he did or not, but man, oh man, Francis Ngannou is now the new heavyweight champion of the world. All right, so this is huge. All right, still think that Stipe Miocic is the greatest UFC heavyweight champion of all time. Now we're going into the new era of the heavyweight champs, which is Francis Ngannou. All right, many do believe that Engano should give Stipe the trilogy fight. Now that would be huge, but in my personal opinion, I don't think that it'll be safe for Stipe to rush back. I think that Stipe's next fight should be Francis, but that should not be Francis's next fight, if you know what I'm saying. I think Francis should be a little bit more active. He wasn't really hurt in those exchanges that he had with Stipe Miocic. I think that Francis, the fight to make right now, and you have to strike when the iron is hot, all right? You really do have to strike when the iron is hot. I think the fight to make is Francis Engano versus John Bones Jones. All right. John Jones moved up to heavyweight. He hasn't fought since February of last year when he ended up defending his light heavyweight title against Dominick Reyes. All right. And that was the last time that we've seen John Jones. All right. Jones later last year ended up vacating his belt. And then it was Dominick Reyes versus Yon Bohovich. And then Yon Bohovich ends up winning the fight. John Jones ends up putting on weight to be a heavyweight. It looks like he has no plans whatsoever of dropping down to light heavyweight. That is a fight to make. All right, I know John Jones wants a big payday, and you can't blame him. This guy has been in the UFC, since 2010, maybe earlier than that. And this guy has been a champion. This guy has been in multiple title fights. He hasn't lost a title fight whatsoever, and I just feel like this will be the biggest payday. I know that John Jones has never made a million pay-per-view buys. The most pay-per-view buys he's ever had was against Daniel Cormier. I think it was his second fight, and I think that had to be like 880,000 or 850,000, somewhere around that ballpark. Right? But if the UFC is smart, that's the fight to make. I know Dana White had said that Derek Lewis should be the next guy. All right, but I think he's only saying that because of the fact that if John Jones is asking for way too much money, he's going to go with the cheaper guy, and that would be Derek Lewis, all right? And it's just very unfortunate. Don't mind me. I love Derek Lewis. I would love to see him fight Francis Engano, and I know both those guys have one punch knockout in their hands, all right? But I just think that the UFC has to strike hot, and they have to make the fight, Francis Engano versus John Bones Jones. All right. If Engano could get past Jones, then you give the fight to Derek Lewis, or if at that time Stipe Miocic is ready to go, then you have to give the fight to Stipe. All right. But I think as of right now, the next fight for Francis Engano has to be John Bones Jones. There can't be no greater fight. I mean, right now Francis has a potential of being a mega superstar. Why not put him against one of the greatest MMA fighters of all time in John Bones Jones? And making that fight happen, I guarantee you it will make easily over 1 million pay-per-view buys, and it'll be one of the biggest fights ever. No better time to put them on International Fight Week when everybody's going to be paying attention. You can stack that card up. I guarantee you it's going to make 1 million pay-per-view buys if those two guys are in the main event. Now, moving on to the rest of the card, you also had in the co-main event Vincente Luque, all right? I think this is the highest he's ever been on a card at co-main event. He is fighting the former welterweight champion, former WEC champ, Tyrone Woodley. All right. Now, Tyrone Woodley has had a bad skid. He's on a 3-fight losing streak. Lost to Kamaru Usman, lost to Gilbert Burns, lost to Colby Covington. What does that tell you right there? Those 3 guys has either fought in a title match, all right, or has either won a title, all right. And those 3 guys are one of the best welterweights of that's going on right now, and they ended up smoking Tyrone Woodley. Now Tyrone Woodley knows that he is in his final fight on his contract. He loses this fight, he's most likely out. Most likely signs with Bellator. Re-signs back with Scott Coker. All right. Going in round 1, immediately he explodes. Tyrone has this gift where he knows that he can knock somebody out. And he just times his explosion very patiently. But in 3 rounds, he knew that he could just explode at any moment. But that worked into Vincente Luque's favor. Right? Vincente Luque feels like he's very, aware of how to handle himself at a war type situation, because those things are very common for him. Right? They were both rocking each other back and forth. Luque got staggered. Woodley got staggered. And then Luque was about to go for the finish. He hurts Woodley. Woodley goes down to the floor. And then Vincente Luque, grabs his head, wraps his arms, puts him in a Doris chokehold, and then hooks his legs. And it was over, because Tyrone Woodley was not going to be able to get out. And that squeeze was so tight. There was no other option for Woodley but to tap out. Woodley tapped out. Right then and there, Dana White had said in the press conference, this guy's going to be 39 soon, and, he's on a 4-fight losing streak. It just doesn't seem like he's going to be brought back. Vincente Luque called out Nate Diaz. I think that's an interesting call out. Wouldn't have really shot for Nate Diaz. I mean, shoot your shot, kid, whatever. But I would have went after, trying to get the rematch with Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. And that's just my personal opinion. I think that's what he should have done. Going into the third fight, you also had Sugar Sean O'Malley making his return since he fought Marlon Cheeto Vera. He's fighting Thomas Almeida. Great fight, knockout by O'Malley. It should have been a knockout in the first round. Understand? I kind of was confused at first, but then at that time I'm like, whatever. Sean O'Malley just showed that he is just levels above Thomas Almeida, and his striking is just very crisp. Can't wait to see who he fights next. I think that he should personally fight Song Yadong. That'd be an excellent fight. Put that on a fight night card, all right, so they can main event. Push Sugar Sean O'Malley as high as possible because I think this kid has so much potential, all right. Second fight, you had Jillian Robertson versus Miranda Maverick. Miranda Maverick has been making a lot of noise about she wants to fight Valentina. She's going into her second fight, fighting Jillian Robertson. She just showed that she's way too strong for Jillian Robertson, all right. 30-27s across the board, except for one judge said it was 29-28. Gave Jillian Robertson the second round because she ended up grappling for over 4 minutes. But Miranda Maverick just shows that this girl's a tough cookie and she's a tough out for anybody. And then the first fight of the card, of the pay-per-view card, Jamie Mullarkey versus Kama Worthy. Boy, Jamie Mullarkey got the hands, man. He got the hands. He knocked out Kama Worthy inside of 48 seconds. What a knockout. Got robbed of the $50,000 bonus, but how can you pass on Sugar Sean O'Malley's knockout? How can you pass on Francis Engano's knockout? And how can you pass on that fight between Vincente Luque versus Tyrone Woodley? All right, guys, that is all for Flavo Oriana's MMA show. I'm your host, Flavo Oriana, and thank you for tuning in, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace, guys.